I'm David Cotton. I'm a father, a brother, a son. I'm a retired U.S. Air Force Brigadier General, a former senior executive in the Department of Defense, a corporate vice president, and now a life coach. At the age of 59, I told my wife, my kids, and the world, I'm gay. Join me as I talk with others who've made this coming out journey late in life to become who they really are.
You're listening to Out Late with David.
My guest today spent most of her life identifying as a man. And while she never considered herself a member of the LGBTQ+ community, at age 57, she came out and transitioned from male to female while remaining in a relationship with her female partner of 28 years. Joining me today from San Francisco is Sara Abrams. Sara, welcome to Out Late with David.
Thank you, David. I'm really happy to be here and happy to be able to kind of share my story.
Sara, when you got married, at the time you identified as a man, is that correct?
You know, the whole thing about identifying as a man, what I like to tell people is, I mean, it's kind of humorous, but I feel it's kind of true, is I was cosplaying as a man, but poorly because, you know, I didn't know how I was supposed to be and everything. I didn't have male role models. It was just kind of tough and everything. But yes, at that point, I identified as a heterosexual cis male.
What was the early years of the marriage like? Were you happy and content?
Well, I mean, I was, you know, honestly, I was never fully comfortable with it, but, you know, I did as best as I could. And, you know, looking back, you know, there were kind of warning signs that I wasn't, you know, maybe the healthiest I could be in the relationship. Mental health problems, you know, the whole thing about transitioning or being trans, it never really came up until much, much later. So that was never the thing. But I kind of always knew that I was different, but I never really understood why or how until I discovered my true gender.
How were you fulfilling your needs to identify as a woman?
This all happened all at once for me, realizing that I am trans. I was 56, 57. I was going through some rough times in my life in a therapy session. My therapist just kind of asked me about, you know, what about your sexuality and gender? And, you know, the way I've always felt like I had a strong feminine side. You know, I was always kind of sensitive. I always had female friends. Those were always my close friends. I was never really able to bond with other men and everything as much as I've been able to bond with women. So from there, that was kind of like, you know, from saying I think I have a very strong female side, it just like, oh my God, I'm a woman, I'm trans. And it was from there. There were really very little, if any, sort of like clues to this before. It was never like, I never dreamt of being a girl. I never, you know, it was never those kind of things, but I knew somehow I was different. And that's why I say it was like cosplaying as a guy, because I wasn't really a guy, but it was just like, okay, I'm trans. Everything made sense. And it was from there, it was just like I was off to the races. Couldn't wait to transition, look back.
Just that one conversation in a therapy session where the therapist asked you about your sexual identity and gender identity.
Absolutely. And it clicked. And, you know, she actually came out to me as non-binary, as a non-binary person. I say she because she goes by she, they pronouns. And actually, I talked to her about a year ago. So this is a couple of years after I started my transition. I said, so did you have any idea of what was going on with me as far as my gender goes? And she said, well, I thought there was something there, but you can't just come out and ask, oh, do you think you're a woman? You know, do you think you're trans? Because that would have, I think that, you know, that question is very, you'd get defensive about it and everything. But allowing me to kind of come to that conclusion by myself, and that she did see something in me. Wasn't quite sure what it was, but that was the moment. It was amazing. It really was amazing.
So what did it feel like to live inside your body before that moment?
Well, as a thing, I never really liked myself. I never really felt comfortable with myself. My big dysphoria was not being able to look at myself in the mirror, not like what I saw, not wanting to because it didn't, I don't know if it didn't seem like me or I just wasn't comfortable with it, whatever. I just could not bring myself to look at myself in the mirror. If I had to comb my hair or whatever, I wouldn't make eye contact. And I didn't love myself. I didn't take care of myself. I wasn't, a great partner. I wasn't a great friend, all these kind of things. I was very much alone, a loner, never had a lot of friends. And honestly, just kind of waiting for the clock to run out on my life and everything, going, I don't see a future for myself. I never saw a future for myself. I never saw goals for myself. I never saw things to live for. And that just completely changed as soon as I started, especially since I started hormones, about a month and a half after I figured everything out.
So what is that transition process like then? Once you had that realization of the therapy session, did you then look in the mirror that evening and you felt different about yourself?
It actually took a while. It did take a while. I was very excited the first, month or so. I think it was probably after maybe a week or so of being on hormones and then being able to look at myself in the mirror, look at myself and smile at myself in the mirror and look at myself and going, I love who I'm seeing in the mirror, and seeing a woman in the mirror, even though I did not look anything like a woman. I mean, I was very much in the very, very early stages, short hair, 5 o'clock shadow, all that stuff. And it was just like, oh my God, I get it now. This is truly where I'm supposed to be. And from that moment on, I like looking at myself in the mirror. I appreciate the way I look, because I know I'm the person I'm supposed to be now. And I was never that person before, and I never liked that person before. It was very cathartic. It was almost spiritual in a way, and that kind of keeps going till today, 3 years after I started.
I can relate at some level, maybe not the same emotional level, but it was very emotional. I looked in a mirror in a hotel room when I was on the road, and I'd said, David Cotton, you were a gay man. And it's like acceptance, realization to where I can now, like you, smile and kind of giggle about it, because it feels so good to actually be authentic. You actually understand what authentic, at least I do. I start to understand what authentic really feels like.
Obviously, a lot of people never get to that point for whatever reason, and what their authenticity means is different from person to person to person. But being able to live that and to live it just out and proudly, and just not really care about what other people think, and I'm doing it for myself. So
what does living authentically mean to you? What's it look like?
Oh, I mean, just being, I'm obviously very visibly trans. I'm still working on getting my look and everything together, but it's just I think people can see my authenticity and my positiveness, all those kind of things kind of show through, and I definitely feel it all the time.
More of my interview with Sara in just a moment. But first, I'd like to recommend a book, Trans Bodies, Trans Selves, edited by Laura Erickson Schroff. I learned about this book from a gender transition doula who offers support services to transgender people, their families, and anyone exploring the relationship to gender. The 23 chapters are written by different authors providing their insight and stories on various topics. Again, the book is Trans Bodies, Trans Selves, edited by Laura Erickson Schroff.
You're listening to Out Late with David.
Do you feel you get more positives from people when you're out in the wild of the world versus negatives or neutrals?
Absolutely. I mean, I went through my life pre-transition pretty much with my my head lowered and not making eye contact with people. Especially in public, I would never kind of do that. I just felt awkward. And now I get so much positivity. And the thing is, living in the Bay Area, like I'm like 30 miles south of San Francisco. San Francisco is like one of the, if not the best place for queer people. This area is wonderful. I am happy to say that I have not gotten any in-person comments or threats or anything like that. And I know that's not what a lot of trans people go through, that kind of stuff. But I'm fortunate because I'm in a place where I'm accepted. People are positive, and if they're not positive, they don't say anything to me, which I appreciate. I know I'm not everybody's cup of tea and everything. That's fine, but I don't get negative reactions at all. I really don't.
So let's go back to that therapist session, and now you go home, and your partner of now 28 years, would have been 25 years at the time. How do you convey this news to her, and then what's her reaction?
God, honestly, thinking back on it, I don't really remember the conversation. And I don't know if I told her right away. I have one very close friend, my friend Miriam, who we've known each other for 40 plus years. And she was actually the first person I told. And I don't know how long after that I told my wife, whether I told her right away or when exactly. But we're both always allies of the queer community, and she's continued to be an ally. And I appreciate her support.
And you're still together today?
We've kind of it's kind of changed into a kind of a roommate situation, and we're don't really hang out or anything, but we're in the apartment at the same time. And I think in a way our emotional connection has become stronger than it was, because it's now we can be almost kind of like girlfriends, and just kind of talk about things that maybe we didn't talk about before, that I certainly didn't feel comfortable talking about. So yeah, it's kind of morphed into this different kind of thing, but it's nice.
How did your friend respond when you told her?
I think there was kind of, there's a shock with everybody, but she was completely supportive from the get-go. She was just wonderful. It was just like, I couldn't have asked for a better friend to kind of go through this and everything with. And she's seen me through some, honestly, there haven't been a whole lot of low points during the transition, but she's seen me through a couple of bad portions, and I love her to death. I couldn't be more happy that we had reconnected after all those years and everything. And yeah, she's just 100% behind me. Great friend, awesome friend.
Any family members?
I have an older brother who lives fairly close to me. I let him know, and he was supportive. I grew up in kind of a queer family. My mom came out as a lesbian when I was like 8 years old back in the early 70s. And my mom always had queer people over, her friends, a lot of queer people, a lot of people of color. So it was a very much this kind of progressive household and everything. My middle brother, he's gay. So it's just like, I'm, my oldest brother, he's the only cishet in the family. So it's just kind of like, he was totally fine with it. We don't have any kids, so there was no discussions with children or anything like that. Honestly, it's been very easy to come out to people. Even my older friends and everything, most of them have been positive. There may have been people that maybe are negative or whatever, but I don't hear from them. And I realized very early in my transition that if somebody that I knew, even if I knew them for a long time, but they were going to have a problem with this, that I really didn't need them in my life at this point. At this age, it's just like, I have no room for that. I really have no room for that.
It sounds like healthy boundaries if you needed them, but haven't needed them, which is nice. When some come out later in life, what I've heard from others report is that they feel a sense of isolation. Did you experience that at all?
I don't think so.
Try to
I
find
don't
their
think so.
community or tribe or whatever label you want to put on it.
I mean, finding my community took a while, but I never really felt isolated because I never really spent any time in the closet. I mean, I let people know as soon as I knew basically, even at work, my coworkers were absolutely wonderful to a person. Everybody was super supportive. My work was super supportive. They asked if I wanted, when I picked my new name, and they said, well, we can't make it your official name on documents, but we can use it internally and everything. I don't know if I felt isolated. I felt like I wanted to grow my community and everything, which I've been able to do over the past couple of years. But as far as isolation goes, no, and definitely not in a negative way.
What you mentioned, the legal documents and things at work. Is there a process that you did or need to go through to change gender?
I submitted a legal request for name and gender change, which in California is very easy to do. They make it very easy for people, trans people especially. There's a lot of protections in California for trans people that aren't in other states, unfortunately. So you basically petition the court, say, I want to change my gender marker on my legal documents to female. And the reason was because I am a trans woman. There is like a 5-week period where it gets processed, and I guess they go through to make sure that there's no sort of like legal reason why you can't change your name, like you're not trying to, fool creditors, or you have legal back, anything like that. I didn't need to appear in court. 5 weeks later, they said it was ready, went in, picked up my documentation. A couple days after that, I went both to Social Security and the DMV and changed it. And again, those were very, very easy. As long as I had the court order with me, I was a lot easier than I thought it was, which is really nice. I am Sara Abrams, a female.
You mentioned that there are lots of protections in the state you live in California, and that there may not be in others. Do you have any concerns or thoughts on kind of the conservative shift of politics being a threat to LGBTQ plus people?
Oh, absolutely. It's sickening to see what's happening in Republican-controlled states. I thought I came out kind of, middle of 2020. We had the election. Biden was elected. Trump was out and everything. I thought this is a great time to be able to transition and be myself and everything. And then a year after that, the backlash just started happening, and it was just overwhelming. It's just like these states just couldn't wait to find somebody, a new group to demonize, where before it's been gay people, it's been immigrants, it's been people of color. They're always looking for somebody else to make the enemy. And it's very discouraging. And I realize that I have privilege because I live in California, and I live in a very liberal area of California, but that, for the most part, is not how trans people live in this country. A lot of trans people never come out of the closet, never be able to be who they are, never be able to thrive and connect with other queer people and have a community that supports them and everything, have a family that supports them. All these things that I kind of have taken for granted because it's been relatively easy for me. So yeah, I'm very concerned.
If you lived in a different state that wasn't as open and affirming as California, do you think you would have followed through?
It's a really good question. I have no idea. And knowing that my mother, came out when I was very young and everything, and she didn't really face any sort of backlash for being a lesbian and everything, that's very powerful too, that queer people are just accepted around here. It wasn't even that they were accepted. It's just you're a person.
Mm-hmm.
It's not who you are. It's just a part of you. And
it's not an issue. It's a fact.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, this isn't like, oh, this is my trans friend. This is my friend.
Friend, right.
You're listening to Out Late with David.
As a life coach, I'm committed to help you discover the passions in your life and help you map a course to achieve the things you really want. Together, we will unwind those persistent self-doubts that are holding you back. You'll begin to see your passions more clearly and set achievable goals. Throughout your journey, I'll be there to challenge and encourage you in moving forward to discover your authentic self. For more information about my personal life coaching services, or to arrange a complimentary consultation, visit davidcottoncoaching.com. I know sometimes when I meet somebody and they find out I'm gay, they then go into the, oh, and they're not gay. They say, oh, I've got this other friend such and such, that's gay. Have you ever experienced things like that when you're meeting someone new?
It's like, I have a trans friend. Do you know my trans friend? It's just like, I don't, but I'd really like to know them. I really would like to meet them because I think it's great for us to meet and connect. And, we're all spread out. We're all through society. We're all over the place. It's not like we're a centralized type of thing. There's fewer of us than most other groups of queer people out there. So anytime I feel like, oh, you have somebody in your life that's trans, if possible, I'd like to meet them and just introduce myself and see, because we've got a lot of things that we can kind of bond over. A lot of our stories are very different, but we have a lot of similarities too.
So Sara seems pretty happy, upbeat, comfortable in life. What are your dreams for the future?
Well, I do have goals as far as my transition. I'm 3 years in. Transition, generally speaking, is up to 5 years, although it varies from person to person, and everybody transitions differently. And everybody's transition is valid, whatever they decide to do. There are a couple surgeries that I'm looking forward to do. And then I think I'm being a really good place where my body will more match my vision of myself.
Well, now that you've had this realization and you've transitioned, has that changed the way you look at the world and others?
It does. Yeah, just trying to be more compassionate and empathetic. Yeah, and it's really easy to do now. Now that I'm living that kind of life and everything authentically, it's so much easier for me to feel that way to other people.
I think each of us has a superpower. What do you think your superpower is?
It's kind of funny because I think it really is empathy and compassion and really caring about people, feeling like I can do something for somebody, empathize with them, or make them laugh, get them out of the moment where they're feeling bad and everything. And that seems to be the thing that I'm actually able to do pretty well.
What's the biggest takeaway from this experience for you?
Biggest takeaway is everybody should transition at least once in their lifetime to see how the other half lives. That is the way to do it.
Okay.
Because you never know who your authentic self. No. Well, first of all, it's never too late. It is absolutely never too late. Do I wish that I could have transitioned when I was 10 years old, pre-puberty, whatever? Part of me says, yeah, but part of me says, realize how hard it would have been, 50 years ago, what you're running into and everything. My big takeaway is kind of like, I'm not a religious person. I don't have faith, but I'm kind of like, takeaway is I am where the universe needs me to be right now. And I feel overjoyed at being able to feel that way because I've never felt that way before.
So what advice do you have others who might be struggling either with their sexual or gender identity and whether they should come out and address it?
When you're ready to come out, when you're ready to find your authentic self, there is a community out there who will embrace you. They are out there. Your chosen family is out there. No matter what your friends and your family say and everything, there is a community out there waiting to be there for you.
I had the fortunate opportunity to moderate a panel on coming out, and one of the members with someone who had transitioned, identify as they, he, and they are now also a trans doula. Did you have any experience or have anyone like that that's a trans doula that helped you through the process?
No, not really. Aside from my therapist, she was very helpful as far as getting me things that I need. But yeah, I think she was the closest one to that. I didn't really meet another trans person in person for 6 months, maybe, afterwards, who I kind of had a conversation with and everything. So, yeah.
So you didn't have any trans friends or acquaintances at all?
No, as far as I know, I've never really interacted with a trans person in my life that I can remember, on a personal level. So
or may have and just did not know that.
May have and just not know.
They were just them. They were just themselves. So.
Exactly. So
this is the way it should be.
And never had a personal interaction with anybody that I knew to be trans. So the one thing I do want to say, I am kind of disappointed that my mom never got to meet me as Sara, because I think she would have been tickled that I grew up to be a lesbian just like her. I think that would have been really fun.
Well, thank you, Sara, for your courage to share your story today. I know it's going to touch somebody. It's going to be somebody's point of light or inspiration as they navigate their own path to their authentic self. So thank you again for being open and honest and vulnerable today. Thank you.
Thank you, David. It's been wonderful talking to you.
I've heard others say gender transition is not a traditional coming out. I think transitioning is the ultimate coming out and is, after all, the T in LGBTQ+. We should not forget many of the key and transformational events in LGBTQ+ history that are related to the advancement of our queer community's rights strongly intersect, if not were initiated by, trans activists. My coming out gay was very disruptive to my life and that of my family and some friends. I can't imagine the additional complexities had my coming out been related to my gender and not just my sexual orientation. As we end this episode, I want to honor the courage it took Sara and others in the trans community to boldly address what they knew to be their authentic self and take the actions necessary to make it a reality. See you next time on Out Late with David.
To hear more episodes, visit outlatewithdavid.com. And to learn more about personal life coaching services, go to davidcottoncoaching.com.